Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Deadliest Warrior podcast. Today, we have a special guest on for an interview. We have El Alamein, as he's known in the Deadliest Warrior community. How you doing, El Alamein?
Hey, guys, I'm doing real good. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you.
Yeah.
So, you reached out to us through the Gmail, and you told us about like how you had a big presence on the Deadliest Warrior Wiki back in the day. I'd just love to hear, before we get into that, I guess, what is your earliest Deadliest Warrior memory?
So my earliest Deadliest Warrior memory is when I was in 6th grade. That's when season 1 came out. So I'm dating myself a little bit there.
I feel like that might have been the same time as us, if I'm not mistaken. What was it?
It's around the same.
Yeah. So
Sure.
we definitely have probably the same experience, you know?
Yeah. Right. So I had one of my friends, in elementary school, and he came up to me and he was like, dude, this show, you would totally think it's awesome. They just did Apache versus Gladiator. And I was like, okay, all right.
Right.
I really didn't know what he was talking about, because it's like the kind of thing where, how do you explain Deadliest Warrior to somebody who's like just completely unfamiliar with it? So I understood that it was this thing where, guys are fighting each other. And so the next week, I was going to watch Viking versus Samurai, but I tuned in before the premiere. So I caught Apache versus Gladiator because, they would rerun the previous week's episode.
Yeah.
And so that was the first episode I saw, was the premiere, but like a week after it premiered. And there was just something that, like a little switch that just went off in my little kid's brain, that I was like, I need more of this.
Yeah.
And it was really traumatic because I had like 3 weeks of looking forward to the next episode. And then in the middle of Mafia versus Yakuza, I was watching with my parents because I was so excited. I wanted the whole family to watch it. And we got through most of the weapons tests. And then we got to Psy versus Ice Pick. And my mom frowns and she goes, I don't know if I want you watching this. This is pretty violent. I don't know if this is appropriate for you. And so she made me stop watching the episode right before the final fight scene. So she sends me to go get ready for bed. And so I'm like crying in the shower, despondent, because I can't watch Deadliest Warrior. And then I come out. Yeah. So I came out because I had been rooting for the Yakuza. So I came out and I asked her, will you at least tell me who won? And she's like, the Mafia. And so I just immediately started crying.
You're like, now it's even worse.
Yeah. There's something about moms and like ninja weapons that they just hate them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think the size, what did it for,
Yeah.
It's a South Park episode.
Stabbing it into those martial arts dojo dummy guys.
Yeah, that was the final straw.
Like the Dick's Sporting Goods mannequin.
The
punching mannequin. Yeah. I love that stuff.
Because the parents saw the South Park episode where they threw
the
ninja star in a butter's eye.
Yeah.
They're like, no more Deadliest Warrior.
It made it past all the guns and the side. That's funny. I mean, were you active? Were you at least watching the aftermath? Because you could probably sneak that in, I imagine, is the aftermath.
I found out pretty quickly that when nobody was home, I could go on spike.com and go watch the episode. So that's what I was doing. For like a couple of weeks, I think I missed premieres. And then I found out, I can watch this, on the computer when nobody's home. So, and then by the time season 2 premiered, I was allowed to watch it again. So, the ban didn't last that long. And then I had to pretend like, I was watching the season 1 episodes for the first time, because my parents were like, oh, go watch season 1. You'll really enjoy it. And I was like, oh yeah, I will. Pretending like I hadn't been doing that.
That's hilarious. That's, yeah, I remember watching like Spartan versus Ninja, I think. And then it was like the middle of season 1 when I caught on. And, Dan, I've told this story before, but like Dan came in the next day and I was like talking to him about Spartan Ninja. And he's like, yeah, did you see Green Beret Spetsnaz, dude? How about that ending? Total bullshit. And I was like, Dan, did you just spoil that episode for me? I was like, because I knew Dan wouldn't be saying that if the Green Berets had won.
Yeah.
Dan goes in his Russian trench coat. bullshit ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a similar thing happen to me for Alexander versus Attila. And I was in middle school at this point, and my whole friend group, we were having bets on who would win. And so and at the time, because it aired at 10 p.m., which was very late past bedtime, so I could record it on the DVR and watch it the next day, but I couldn't stay up and watch it because it was a school night. So I didn't know who won. And I walked into school, and one of my friends who was rooting for Alexander with me runs to me full speed, and he's telling me, "Don't listen to Julio," who's one of our other friends. He's like, "Don't listen to him." And I knew that Julio was rooting for Attila. So I was like, "Dude, you spoiled it for me." He's like, "I didn't tell you who won." I'm like, "You basically did."
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where it's like, if you're upset, I know.
Yeah. For some reason, high school kids cannot understand that concept, of spoiling stuff. Like it's like posting on Facebook, like a character dies from,
like Mandalorian or something.
But yeah, or just like they eat salad, and then she's like, "I'm not going to say what happened, but not eating salad anytime soon." It's like, oh, thanks. Like the entire episode's ruined. And it's like, I think high school kids don't understand that. But
so when did the forum come about? Because you said you're big into the Deadliest Warrior Wiki. So I guess, what do you do on there? How did that all start for you? Give us some early memories. I'm looking forward to it.
So I should clarify, the Deadliest Warrior Wiki, as of right now, and as you've noticed when you comment on the episodes that are about the actual show, there's the Deadliest Warrior Wiki curse. Yeah. Like, it's dead. It's a wasteland. It's a ghost town. So the main wiki that we do things on is the Deadliest Fiction Wiki. And that's where people can write their own Deadliest Warrior style battles, and that kind of thing. But so to start with the Deadliest Warrior Wiki, I didn't create it, but I stumbled on it in the summer of 2010 while season 2 was premiering. And the wiki was bare bones. There weren't pages for all the warriors. So I hadn't even created an account at this point. I just started as an anonymous user creating like really, really bad wiki pages, because I was like in 7th or 8th grade. I didn't know how any of it worked. And then I guess a couple other people started editing as well. And so over the summer of 2010, the Deadliest Warrior Wiki started to come together. And one of the main things that we did, while the episodes were airing, there would be blogs where people would guess who was going to win the upcoming episode, or we would debate like why we think our guy's going to win. But like in between season 2 and season 3, there wasn't a whole lot to actually do related to the show. So we started doing this thing called the Deadliest Fiction, which was where people on the Deadliest Warrior Wiki would create pages for fictional warriors, and we would do hypothetical Deadliest Warrior style battles with those characters.
Yeah.
And
pick weapons at the different ranges.
Yeah.
Edge and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because like for warriors for whom that makes no sense, like one of the first battles was with Voldemort. And how do you put his weapons in close range and mid range and long range? And so what we would do is, like, for magic users, we would arbitrarily just take a spell and say this can only be used at close range, or this is his long range thing.
Avada Kedavra is close range or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, how the fuck do you beat that?
That's pretty awesome.
You load up WWE 2K.
I'm sure there's a lot of Voldemorts in there. That's awesome. I'm surprised we haven't stumbled across that. We'll have to link it, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it.
Yeah, I was trying to research for this interview, and I did stumble onto the Deadliest Fiction website, and I was going through the forums, and I was like, oh, it's just like, this is where the community lives. Like, it's all basically what we're planning on doing for like a season 2 Back for Blood, right? Like, we're just going to do a big fan fiction probably. And I thought that was really cool. It's still alive.
As somebody who, I imagine you're on like, the Deadliest Fiction and encounter a lot of what if battles like with Voldemort. I don't know if this is confirmed or not. Do you believe that Death Battle copied Deadliest Warrior?
Ooh, okay. So I'm like totally not qualified in any way to give an opinion on that. But yeah, I think so. I mean, especially if you look at their early stuff, like when they were first coming out with episodes that were, way less predicated on things like their pseudo scientific calculations, where they'll take a pixel and argue that it represents X amount of space and then do all this math stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it was Deadliest Warrior inspired, especially if you think about the format. They take, one warrior and they show their abilities and weapons, and then they compare that to the next one. And then they have like a real short fight, like Deadliest Warrior's fights were never this extravagant, set piece. It was like guy walks into a field, sees the other guy, and they just instantly decide that man must die. And
Right.
like,
Yeah.
there's nothing that's going to stop either one of them until one of them is dead.
Yeah, because it's interesting. It just made me think of that, and I've always wondered. I was like, they definitely like. I mean, it's become something. We don't have like a big beef with Death Battle. I'm sure it certainly has evolved and lasted a lot longer than Deadliest Warrior, but there's a lot of overlap, I think. There.
What about epic rap battles of history?
Stop it.
That's still a thing.
Unfortunately,
I think it garners way more views than our show.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
The death battle. I think I only remember watching Superman versus Goku. Right, I think that was one of them.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, that was one of them. They rematched it too. They did a sequel.
Oh, of course. Did they have? I think Superman won the first time.
Yeah, he won the second time too.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, did they like shake it up and have Goku win so that they have to do a third, episode?
Oh yeah, for the trilogy.
It's like Green Brave versus Spetsnaz effect.
Yeah.
Of all the, I'm sure there's a lot more passionate Goku heads than Superman heads. So,
Well, it's interesting. So the Deadliest Warrior Wiki has all the information you ever need on there. I mean,
And
it truly,
more.
Yeah, anything you need from the show is on there.
It's got history on guns that aren't real, weapons that aren't real.
So weapons are made up. They're there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And even the actual Wikipedia. So I don't know if you've ever gone on the actual Wikipedia for Deadliest Warrior. Like each episode, it is thorough. It is like a friggin' text description of the whole episode, basically. Like they'll talk about how weapons are tested, what happened, what got the edge. There's a description of the final battle, not as good as Lucas's final description of the battles.
Right, of course not.
But do you know anything about that? Like, did anybody have contribute to the actual Wikipedia page for those things? Because they're very in depth.
Yeah, I don't know if I know who did the Wikipedia editing. It's possible that somebody in the community has done it and just hasn't, felt the need to talk about it. So I'm not sure who's done that. Nor do I remember really how we came up with a consensus for what the actual written narrative was going to be on the wiki. Because I do remember I got, as I mentioned in my comment for the Medellin cartel versus the pirates, I was so bent out of shape over that episode because my family's from Colombia. And so I went to the wiki the next day and I wrote the battle sim. But, I was 13 or 14 or something like that. So it was garbage. And so somebody like wrote over it and like completely changed, the way it was written. They did a better job than I did, but I do remember I did try to like contribute to the battle sim in written form, and they weren't having any of that.
Was there maybe some bias in your description? Just like the stupid Somali pirates. But well, so you say your family's from Colombia. Was it you who you explained the Mangian? Can you? This has nothing to do with the interview, but I'd like some native speaker.
Yeah, this is a thing of Craig's. This has become like a
because I noticed and I thought it was the funniest thing ever. I was like, wait, this is like it's like a blink and you'll miss it. Yeah. Can you explain what's going on there?
Medellin drug cartel used it in front of the DAS building. Medellin drug cartel was trained by paramilitary groups. Oh! That's Medellin style. Now that's a Medellin car bomb.
Oh. Yeah. So I don't know, like if Michael Corleone Blanco was born and raised in Colombia, or if he kind of gave me like the vibes of like some Miami guy, like that was kind of his attitude. And so like if you have a neutral pronunciation of the city, it would be Medellin in Spanish. But then of course you have, lots of different regional accents. And so it sounds to me kind of like a Miami accent where he's like Medellin, so he's kind of like dropping the some of the vowels and then like doing a bit more of, you know, like a J sound for the D. And I'm not a linguistics expert, so I can't tell you like what that sound is called or whatever. But yeah, so he's basically taking it from Medellin to Medellin. He's just kind of saying it a little bit faster, and so I could be totally wrong on like maybe it's some part of Colombia that, you know, my family's from a different part, so I don't recognize the accent, or but you know it also could be that, you know, if his mom was Griselda Blanco, I bet he was raised in the U.S. And spent a lot of time there because she was rich. So that might be that's my guess as to why he's saying it like that.
Sure. And you know, I always just figured like his family probably says it that way, so he just says it that way.
Yeah.
He looks like he just got off a speedboat at any given time.
Yeah, he does have
cruising Miami Vice.
He does have some Pitbull vibes for sure.
But do you have... So Deadliest Warrior, there's lots of different degrees of enjoyment. There's actually enjoying the episode. This was the most insane thing I've ever seen, and it was bullshit, but I loved it. And then just unwatchable. Do you have an episode that maybe fits into those categories for you?
So the thing about the way I watched it as a kid was like, I wasn't a real sporty person. So for me, every episode of Deadliest Warrior was like watching the Super Bowl or the World Cup.
Yeah.
Like, I cared so bad if my guy won or lost. Like if my guy won, I would like go to bed so happy. I'd be on top of the world. If my guy lost, like depending on how much I cared, I'd either be like anywhere from angry to like despondent. Like a Deadliest Warrior loss would ruin my night. But like in a great way, the same way that you're upset if your team loses the championship. Like you still watch it. Like you still go hard for it. And it was only like over time as I, you know, like I'm in grad school studying history, like as I actually became like more aware of like, oh, this show actually is not like the Bible about history. Like I took everything at face value. I believed it so hard. And it was like only gradually that I was like, oh, wait a sec. This is actually like not only not true, but like straight up wrong.
It's like leaving a cult. It's just like when you watch it again as an adult.
Yeah, we went through the same exact thing. Where
it was when
like,
we started this show. We like, there's probably been a little bit since we've actually watched an episode. We had our complaints, but we're really seeing through like the veil now.
Well, I'll never forget when we were getting ready for the first recording, and it was like Spartan versus Ninja, and we watched it together, and we were like, wait a minute.
You know, one of the things too that was so eye-opening is I thought like pigs bled that much. Like I thought all that blood was real. I thought that like the dummies had that much. Like I thought all of that was real. And so when I realized they just like put these little blood sacks, that was a big revelation to me.
I thought that a Spartan shield actually hit with the power of a space shuttle launch. Like 46 Gs.
But that being said, I still go back and like watch it. I still really enjoy it. Do you go back and watch the show often still, or?
Yeah, I have less time for it now that I'm like teaching and researching and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I do have the season 1 DVD.
One
You know,
of the few.
I'm able to watch that.
It's an elite
Periodically,
class.
the season 2 and season 3 episodes will show up on Daily Motion, and then they'll get removed. But I'll always, you know, if I go to Daily Motion and I type Deadliest Warrior, it's always like, what new episode will there be for me to watch today? So yeah, it's always fun to go back and rewatch it. But in terms of like, if there's any episode that like I think is unwatchable, for me, you know, I don't look at it that critically. Like as bad as it is from the history perspective, as like transparent as it is from like the this is pretty rigged perspective, like maybe it's just the nostalgia, but I just have a great time watching it. And so I can't, there's no episode that if somebody put it on, I'd be like, I guess the closest one would be Zombies versus Vampires, because that's not why I watched the show. I watched it to watch actual historical figures beat the hell out of each other. But yeah, I would still watch Zombies versus Vampires if the choice was that or no Deadliest Warrior.
Yeah. I totally agree.
There's one episode that we universally classify not as unwatchable, but like as the closest it would come to that. And so we can't say what it is.
Yeah,
yet,
we're not.
but
We're saving it as a surprise. It's
Yeah.
in season 3, so
There's gonna be an episode that
Can I give my opinion on a season 3 episode that I don't think was done very well?
Absolutely.
Okay. I do think that in Joan of Arc versus William the Conqueror, the sim has some funky green screen effects going on, and it does not look like they're fighting in a castle. It looks really, really bad. So
like a
that's
high
just
school
my
play,
opinion. Don't know what episode you all are talking about. So, right.
We did have a gag that we unfortunately won't be able to do. Is we were gonna have like Matt's wife be in like maybe one of like Lucas's girlfriend or something be on the Joan of Arc exclusively and not mention why.
yeah, all women, just
All
like
women.
all women hosting that episode.
But that's the only episode. But,
Right.
so can't do that anymore. But
yeah, well, you said like you're into history. You're pursuing a degree in that. What are your actual, like, what degree do you have and what are you working on right now?
Yeah, so I have a master's degree in history right now, and I'm a PhD student. And so my focus is military history. And then within that subfield, I'm working on the military history of Colombia. So I'm working on the Thousand Days War, which was fought at the turn of the 20th century. And it was a civil war in Colombia between the liberals and the conservatives, as most of Colombia's civil wars turned out to be, if you get into that. So my research is about how in the more recent civil wars, how memory of the Thousand Days War was important for people. So even though the war ended in 1902, my research is trying to show that in the 1950s and 1960s, people were still looking at this old war, and it like had really deep scars, real deep impacts on people, on Colombia's memory. And so, I hope that by doing that, I can show like, learning about the way that people deal with historical trauma actually matters, because sometimes if those traumas don't heal, then you have a new war and you have new traumas that, get layered on top of each other.
Sure. Yep. Never fully like heals really. That's very interesting. You said you got into your studies. You said partly because you were inspired by the show Deadliest Warrior. Is there something specific that inspired you? Like, what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I will say, like, in the field of military history, there's like 3 main kinds of military history from the academic side of things. So you have like operational history, which is like, when you look at strategies and battles and like you look at maps and, this division does the flank around the eastern part of the island or that kind of thing. And then you have something called organizational military history, which looks at like the way that an army as an organization evolved. So like this would be historians who study like the way that the army chief of staff was set up, or, the route reforms with the US military, that kind of thing. And so what I do, the third kind, and I think what Deadliest Warrior relates to, is called social or cultural military history. And it's all about like what that war history looks like from the perspective of people who were involved in it. And that can either be from the perspective of actual people, like what they leave behind as their memories, or also the weapons, the uniforms, the clothing, the things that they had with them. So that's the material culture aspect. And so even though I don't think Deadliest Warrior was trying necessarily to be a cultural and social history type of show, when you talk about the experiences of people, and when you focus on the artifacts that they would use, even if they're not real artifacts on the show, but you're highlighting them, that was really fascinating to me. And to do it from such a global perspective, I think what Deadliest Warrior taught me to appreciate as an academic is that you have all of these different things that make lots of different cultures and warrior societies unique, but there are also a lot of points of intersection that allows you to compare them in the first place, right? Like people going to war are going to have their own values from their cultural backgrounds, but there are certain things that are biological or psychological. And so, maybe that's what Deadliest Warrior called the X factors. But that's what, the academics like to get into, is like, why do people make decisions the way they did? Or, why do people react the way they do under pressure? Why does it take you a quarter of a second to perceive a projectile and then another quarter of a second to get out of the way? And that's the no reflex kill zone distance or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, It's interesting. I mean, I know I didn't realize that there were so many different avenues in terms of history. I mean, do you find that there are other people within like your field who knew what Deadliest Warrior is, or I feel like there's a little bit of a camaraderie with a lot of people our age. It's like, oh, I remember that weird show. Do you find any of that?
Yeah, so yeah, there are definitely other grad students who know what Deadliest Warrior is. For those who didn't in my program, everybody now does know, because when people would ask me like, oh, what got you into history? I'd be like, well, have you ever heard of the show Deadliest Warrior? And so, after a couple months, everyone knew like, okay, don't ask him about Deadliest Warrior. He's going to go on. But I mean, in season 3, you have actual professors. You have actual experts for once be experts on the show, which I think is kind of refreshing. And I've had a chance to talk to some of those people who were on the show as professors for 1 or 2 episodes. And, I think it's funny because then I tell them how I grew up watching the show and they're like, oh yeah, I did that because I got an email and I didn't know what was going on. And they have like, they don't really remember it. They were like, oh yeah, that was a thing I did. And I was like, that was the thing you did. And they're like, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think what's also weird about Deadliest Warriors, there is like an attempt there. Like you talk about like the wide breadth of warriors, like in a global perspective. Like you're not talking about just the most common people. You got some less common people like, Rajput,
Zondes,
and that's a lot of our first exposures to those sorts of cultures. And then you get to season 3 with like the actual tactics, they would talk about it for a few minutes, but still there's an attempt to elevate it to an extent. So that's interesting that there is somewhat of an attempt made.
Yeah, there's at least a decent scrap of like actual science and history behind it, but it's just all wrapped up in a big manly package on Spike TV.
Right, yeah. That's the thing. Having them fight each other is like the vehicle that gets the show on it as a television show.
It was a perfect balance of just like bros being bros with a little bit of science behind it.
Yeah. So in your, I'll say professional opinion, what do you think is the most accurate episode, and then maybe the least accurate episode that you can remember?
Okay, that's a tough one. Okay, so
besides vampires versus zombies,
right? Yeah, obviously
it's like
the most accurate one. It's hard because I think with each episode there are things that they get right, and they tend to be, like either looking at the ways that the weapons were at least idealized, even if the experts don't know how to use them. Like you have some guy who's never held a sword before, and then they're like, okay, chop up this pig. But at least, presenting the weapons, assuming that the warrior actually used those weapons. I think one of the shortcomings might be trying to force things into the long range, mid range, close range category, because in real life, people don't just like switch to a different weapon at like, a different distance or that kind of thing. And I get it's for the purpose of the show and for designing tests and comparison. So I guess I'm kind of dodging the question as to what's the most I don't know if I want to call any one episode the most accurate. I don't think I can. No episode is that accurate.
You might lose all of your credibility.
I would say one of the episodes that I would consider less accurate would be Jaguar versus Zonde. This is my bias as a Latin American military historian, but Jaguar warriors and Aztec priests were 2 different things. And I think they kind of fused those 2 roles together, like by giving them the sacrificial dagger. Nobody would use that on the battlefield. And I don't believe Jaguars would have carried that. But I get that you want to have a cool heart sacrifice test because it's the Aztecs, but like the Jaguars and the priests were different classes from different parts of society. They had different functions. So that was a pretty egregious thing.
Sure.
Even we could tell. We were like, all right, listen.
Yeah, it's like, come on.
Well, we've deduced over time that whenever they bring on a special weapon like the sacrificial dagger, it's usually because they want to do some big fake scene,
or there's a story,
or mythological tale that goes along with this weapon, but it's not like an actual battle weapon half the time.
Yeah. I will say that the macuito on the horse head is accurate in the sense that shows up in the Spanish Chronicles. So I don't know if it really could decapitate a horse or not, because the problem when you look at the Spanish sources of the conquest is that they will exaggerate things a lot. But you do find in the primary sources that there are claims of the Aztec soldiers like killing horses because they perceived the horse as like a greater prize to kill than the Spaniard, because when the Spaniard doesn't have his horse, then he's suddenly on equal footing with you.
Yeah, and I think like we noticed a lot of people, like maybe a little bit more than usual, that were like, oh, the Aztec episode was bullshit. We found that channel that was like, this dude went on, I imagine, an accurate rant about everything that was wrong with that episode. So I think
is that the one where he's like in his room and there's like a little box TV? Okay, yeah, I've seen that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
We linked that in the video description for that episode. I guess to wrap back to the wiki real quick, the Deadliest Fiction wiki. Are you still on there regularly, or what's it look like nowadays?
Yeah, so it definitely has a big community. I'm not as active as I once was in terms of writing battles. And just like for context, the way it works is like people will write a blog post, and on the blog, we will structure it, kind of like a Deadliest Warrior fight where you present the two sides. We'll like make a nice thumbnail with a little versus, lightning bolt splitting them apart. And the way the Deadliest Fiction works is that community members comment on the blogs and type out a vote where you have to justify why you think the winner who you pick would win. And usually we'll still give edges like on the show.
Because it's
fun. That's not a requirement. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's not a requirement. And so it's not up to the author who wins. The author's responsibility is to do the research, present the best information about the matchup possible, and then leave it up to the voters to actually make that judgment call. And so whoever gets more votes, the author will then, write a battle. And we've written some pretty elaborate battles, over the years. I will say, like, when the Deadliest Fiction wiki first started in 2010, we definitely were like Deadliest Warrior, but fictional. That was kind of like our MO. Over the years, we have moved away from Deadliest Warrior a little bit in terms of like being a strict template that you adhere to. So it doesn't have to be long range, close range, special weapons. You don't have to give edges. I would say one of the biggest things that shows how we've sort of moved past the show is like initially a rule was no user can write a battle that was on Deadliest Warrior, the show. You couldn't do it. And then in 2018, I think we got rid of that rule because we were like, actually, the show can often be full of crap. We could do a better job rematching them. So for instance, I rematched Waffen-SS versus Viet Cong. And like, I pulled out the stops, like I wrote these 2 little documentary videos and posted them on YouTube for the community to watch and then make their judgment call. And then I wrote this like long, like 20-page story of like Waffen-SS versus Viet Cong. And so that was a lot of fun.
Wow. So what was when you made those videos, what was your wardrobe? Were you wearing normal clothes, or you were wearing wardrobe inspired by the episode?
Yeah. No better soldier ever fought for a worse cause. No, I was strictly the narrator. I was like downloading archival footage and I stitched together like a little documentary. So that was how I did that one.
It sounds like we need to actually do some exploring on the Deadliest.
I think we need to come up with our own.
Yeah, I think I think we need to write some stuff.
Yeah, you just Grim Reaper Spetsnaz over and over and over again to heal.
We do have kind of a big claim to fame in that since Deadliest Fiction started over the summer of 2010, we actually wrote George Washington versus Napoleon before season 3 announced that as the actual episode.
No.
So while we had the moratorium on no Deadliest Warrior fights on the wiki, somebody had written Washington versus Napoleon that was allowed to stay because they did it before the actual episode was announced.
Interesting. So, who did the website think?
We voted, the majority voted for George Washington, so he won that one. But that was pretty controversial at the time because there were a handful of us who were like really gunning for Napoleon. But the votes speak for themselves, and so you have to
mark my words, Napoleon crowd, we're coming. We're gonna come.
Well, you know what? That's interesting. We'll have to do as part of our Napoleon video an analysis of like comparing like both the episode and
Yeah, we need to like include that in now. I
like that someone on the actual Deadliest Warrior show is like, We're out of ideas. You want to go with the Deadliest Warrior?
Yeah, they probably stole it from the wiki. I bet you they did.
This one looks good.
If they had like such lack of ideas that Zombie vs. Vampire was one of them, they had to have at least tried the wiki.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, we can't get Voldemort, so we got to go to something.
We can't get the license for Voldemort.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool that the community's still alive on there. Does the community know about our show?
Oh yeah, they definitely know.
Oh, no.
They know I'm on. They know I'm doing this interview, so
Yes.
they're excited. They're happy that I'm representing everyone. They definitely wanted me to say that we did Washington versus Napoleon first. That was
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
They were like, make sure you tell them that. Make sure you tell them that we did it first.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, we'll 100% have a section because I think that's super interesting. Do you find like, because you're obviously extremely knowledgeable, we just tell with a lot of these tactics, and history you're talking about. Do you find that there are other people that are pursuing degrees just like you, or that are lifelong history lovers? Did a lot of these people grow up to become little L. Alamains or big L. Alamains, I guess?
Yeah. So I did talk with a lot of community members. We have a Discord server that anybody who joins the wiki is free to join. And so I think that's part of what's helped the community stay pretty strong and tight knit. So I talked to them about like their memories. Some of the older users, definitely, who've been there from the start, like me, we remember the show. We have real formative memories about it. A lot of the younger users who've joined, in the past 3-4 years, they never heard of Deadliest Warrior until they joined the Deadliest Fiction Wiki. Their perspective, their frame of reference is Death Battle, or there are other offshoot wikis. There's the Versus Battles wiki. There's all these other wikis that do their own style. So I think that I can't prove it, but I really feel like if Deadliest Warrior is the origin of Death Battle, and Death Battle led to these other offshoot sites, Deadliest Warrior kind of was the origin of this, big versus community that spans different websites, even if a lot of the younger users have never even heard of Deadliest Warrior before.
That could be your next thesis.
Say again?
So that could be your next thesis.
Yeah, it could. Yeah. Do a little sociological study of like the origin of the versus community. And we don't always get along. Like Deadliest Fiction is really small compared to some of the other like versus battles wiki. But there have been users we have notorious users who have been banned for bad behavior. And I am one of them. The community knows about this now, but that original account back in 2010, when I was in middle school, I really wanted people to take me seriously because I really liked history. I wanted people to, take my opinions on who was going to win and like believe me. So I made up the story that I was a current history professor and that I was ex-Colombian Special Forces.
That's awesome.
I'm like 13 years old and I'm like trying to sound like a professor and like some ex-commando. But because all the other community members at the time were also around 13 years old, people believed me for the most part. And because the community was based around voting, and that was how the Warriors won, I made a second account pretending to be the son of the professor and ex-commando. And so eventually I got found out and both of those accounts were banned. And so after a while I rejoined and the community forgave me because they were like, well, you were a kid, so it's fine.
Yeah.
But
That's such a 13-year-old thing to do. I can't even explain why, but it's like, I think every 13-year-old boy has done some form of that.
That's like me going on to the Jeff Damon website.
I was going to say, do you want to talk about that? I think that'd be a good. We have our own Deadliest War related prank that I think we've been waiting for a good time to share. I think that this will be a good opportunity.
Yeah, I think this is a good time. We were gonna wait till we got Jeff on because now that we got Max, there's no stopping us now. But yeah, do you remember Jeff Damelin used to have his website? It was like jeffreythordamelin.com.
no, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So sometimes Jeff wears, when you're watching these episodes in the aftermaths, he has like this t-shirt with like an AK-47 on it.
It says like, what is AK? Kalashnikov?
Yeah, it's like Kalashnikov, and it's got like
it has like
different
arrows
specs.
that point to like the parts of it. Like
7.62.
Yeah, it's like
Trigger.
it's like tap out adjacent, and that's his clothing line.
Yeah, it was like some of the merch he had on his website. Well, anyways, he had a guest book. Okay, and And you just had typed your username and your message. You didn't have to have an account. You didn't have to sign in or anything. So I would go in like during school
History
and
class.
I would just fuck around on this guest book, and I would sign in as like Darth Maul or something like that. And at one point I got so bad on there. It was like me and Mike got so bad yelling at each other on this guest book that
Because it was just it's like just us.
that who knows if it was the real Jeff, but someone posted under the name Jeff Damelin and said, "Yo, can you guys chill on my guest book?"
Well, there's also, before that even happened, you signed in and made your name Jeff Damelin, and you were like, "Thanks, guys. Thanks for all the support."
Does that website still exist, or did it get taken down?
I looked. I
think
I
it
couldn't
does.
find it.
Yeah.
I couldn't find it when I started looking. JeffreyThorDamelin.com. I'd have to double check. Maybe it does exist, but I feel like I Googled it recently and I couldn't find it.
If it does, catch me on the guest book tonight.
Yeah. Well, come on the pod. No, we it's also kind of some more proof that it did exist. Max will reference it, like in what episode was it? It might have been Cartel, Medellin versus Somali Pirate.
He talks stupid Somali pirates.
Yeah. he talks about like Blood on the Sand, which was his blog, I think, on his own website, if I'm not mistaken. So, just a little bit of like in-universe proof that it is real.
I'm gonna be on there tonight. I'm gonna be Professor Commando with my son, descendant of Professor Commando.
Yeah,
But that story is hilarious, dude. It's so funny. I'm glad they forgave you and took you back after that, because that just means you're a dedicated fan. You're trying to make your voice heard.
yeah. So hopefully Jeff doesn't watch this, but we were debating if we were gonna save it for him. It could be our most awkward moment, period. So we'll see. Do you think it was really funny or just not funny at all?
We'll be like, all right, moving on.
Yeah. So we'll see more to come on that.
I guess some easy layup questions here, but we gotta ask them because they're fun, right? Like, favorite episode, favorite warrior.
Okay, so definitely season 2. The favorite episode would have to come from season 2. Just because I think that had the peak like CGI budget for like it was the most graphic season. So like CIA versus KGB is fun because of all the wonky weapons. Vlad versus Sun Tzu has a special spot in my heart because I won a major bet over one of my friends who was like just totally wanking Sun Tzu. Like he was like, Sun Tzu's gonna win. I was like, no, he's not. So like I got a whole bunch of
show.
Yeah. Like the Aztec episode, like as bad as it was, I was excited for it. And it's still fun, the heart ripping out scene. It has a pretty graphic finisher in the sim. So yeah, those might be my favorites. My favorite warriors. I was rooting for Lawrence of Arabia pretty hard. And another thing, for Colombia's military history, the 1,000 Days War, the war that I'm researching for my dissertation, that war ended because the United States intervened. And Theodore Roosevelt was president at the time.
Interesting.
And Panama was part of Colombia at the time. And so Theodore Roosevelt sent the USS Wisconsin into Panama Bay, disembarked Marines, and said, "This war is officially over." So neither side won the Civil War in Colombia. The US won. He said, "This war is over. And also, by the way, Panama's an independent country now because we want to dig the canal through it and not have to pay you for it." So yeah. I was rooting against Theodore Roosevelt because as a Colombian, I see him as responsible for the theft of Panama. So I was rooting for Lawrence pretty hard because I knew it was a lost cause. I knew there's no way he was going to win with the track record of American warriors at that point. We were a long way away from the Green Berets, but
right.
Yeah, so Lawrence, in terms of maybe the non-named warriors, I thought that the Maori were pretty cool. I wasn't rooting for them, but I did think that they were, cool to learn about.
Yeah,
fun.
Yeah, they're definitely a really fun warrior.
Do you think the backlash from Spetsnaz versus Green Beret is the reason no like U.S. warrior loses after that?
It's crazy because I've tried to find out like if the outcome was predetermined by, and I watched the Max episode. I still feel like I'm not quite satisfied by the answer about if the producers decided it or not, like regardless of if the sim is real. So I could see the case being that, you know, they decided to make the Green Berets lose for controversy and more views. But like, what backlash would there be? Like, what consequences would you possibly have that would make you decide, okay, from now on, every single American wins? Like, I would think that that kind of negative controversy would like generate like people talking about the show. So, but yeah, I do tend to lean towards the conspiratorial side and think that they were making the Americans win on purpose.
Also, you got to think about the time it was released. Like, that whole era was just super, even like more now, just super pro-America, like with 300 coming out. It was really a product of the time.
It's Spike TV too. It's meant to be like watched while you're drinking Busch Lights.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you think we're going to let a Frenchman beat George Washington? Guess again, you know?
Yeah. Do you have a favorite expert, which is one of our favorite elements of the show?
Okay, so besides the experts who I do know because they are my professors, I'll recuse myself from weighing in on that. But I think I like J.W. Wiseman from the Jesse James episode because I like his line, "You can run faster than that? I didn't think you could run."
Matt, you gotta say his name.
J.W. Wiseman.
He's got the most cowboy name.
He's one of them, I think, that has one of the better lines. I like the Vlad experts just because they're like so committed to the like the Nazi experts committed to the bit, but like they shouldn't have. The Vlad experts committed to the bit, and like it's funny. Like,
it's, you know, better for it.
Yeah. So like I think there's like one shot where like I think it's Bram Gallagher. He's like kind of like looking, but it's like in the background. It's kind of like that one shot of Fahim Fazli holding the pistol to the back of the dummy's head. Like Bram Gallagher is doing it in the background. It's like a blink and you'll miss it thing.
Yeah, we'll have to watch out. And that's our next one.
Yeah, that's the next one. Coincidentally, your two favorite episodes, you said KGB, CIA, and Vlad Sun Tzu. Your interview is probably going to come out between those two episodes. It's almost fated, you know?
Yeah. And there's a lot of fun stuff I remember on the aftermath for Sun Tzu versus Vlad. A lot of weird stuff. So we'll obviously be covering that.
For sure.
Because the Vlad people are really goofy. And they don't exit character in the aftermath. So I'll be paying the $3 for you guys to check that out.
I pay the $1.99 for the I don't get the HD version.
Yeah. So...
is there anything while you're on here, you know, the community, you said probably watching this video, is there anything you want to say on behalf of the community?
Anything you want to plug?
Or to them? Yeah, plug anything. You can obviously email us some links that we can put in the descriptions too.
Yeah, I'll definitely send some links about wiki related stuff. I did write down some quotes. I think one of the things, this is a direct quote from a user. This is Leolab. So shout out to Leolab. He's
shout out.
One of the oldest users along with me, been there from the beginning. And so he said, this is a quote, "We're a very diverse space. We have a shit ton of nationalities. We have a shit ton of races. We have a shit ton of sexual orientations. We have a lot of people with mental health issues, very few people without. We've got normies, we've got edgelords, we've got memes." So I think, you know, that's one of the things that our community is small, but, you know, I'm the only like, you know, professional historian in training. You know, other people are history fans. Other people are there for the battles with fictional characters. So there's a bit of something for everyone. And I think, you know, as we've been a community that's been around for so long, some of us have had the chance to mature online together and go from pretending to be ex-commandos and fake professors to, I guess, maybe one day being a professor. You know, we've learned to value the differences that we have. And I think that makes for a cool, you know, not just like in the corny, like, you know, diverse society way, but like, since we have such different interests, that means that we can bring together matchups with warriors that I might not have heard of otherwise, you know, for people who like really obscure animes or whatever. And then I can bring in generals from the 1,000 Days War who don't even have Wikipedia pages, but I can do battles with them. So I think that's something that definitely is a strength of the Wiki's community.
That rules. We're definitely getting on there.
Matt's
we're
gonna
getting
be
on that
submitting Star Wars characters.
We're gonna be on there.
Yeah, our Star
Well,
Wars
if you guys
OCs.
make an account and drop in the Discord, I'm sure that everyone would be psyched to
Oh, yeah.
chat with you and everything. Yeah.
I think maybe we'll have to make a stop by.
Yeah.
Yeah,
check
look
it out.
forward to user Peekaboo Jones 69.
That'll be Lucas. Okay. Well, are you guys satisfied? You got all the questions you wanted for Al Alamein?
I got a question for anyone out there watching. Tell me what Peekaboo Jones is from, a video game, early 2000s. If you could name it, I won't do anything, but I'll be impressed.
In the comments. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I had a last question prepared here, but now that I've learned that the Deadliest Wiki is basically a graveyard now, it no longer pertains, because I've been trying to get our podcast added onto the Deadliest Wiki.
I can see your dreams shattered.
I mean, I can go and edit it if I still can go on the Wiki.
Because my question was going to be, when are we getting an entry on the Deadliest Wiki? But,
and then you guys will also have the Deadliest Warrior Wiki curse, where if you get Googled, that'll be the first thing.
That's what I mean. Because if you you guys had to have had world-leading SEO experts that it's the number one thing. If you search anything tangentially related to Deadliest Warrior, so we're gonna be at the top of the Google charts.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, based on the curse.
Well, Al Alamein, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. We definitely want to do this episode for the fans. So, really appreciate it. Everybody watching at home,
We'll catch you on the Deadliest Warrior.
stay deadly. Yeah.
On the Wiki.
Yep. Maybe we'll make a stop into the Wiki and the Discord. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
if I can check the Discord.
Yeah. All right. Stay deadly.